We'll start with our first speaker. I have the honor to invite Darren, Shou, VP, Head of Global Research Labs, and Chief of Staff of CTO Office in Symantec. But before I call Darren to the stage, I want to share with you that we surf the web continuously. But Darren surfs the waves globally. And on his last visit here in Israel, he was excited to surf the waves of Tel Aviv, and we are proud to provide this experience to do besides the cyber challenges. So Darren, it's my honor, please.
Thank you. All right, so can you hear me now in the back row? Perfect. So the seventh aspect and a secret to innovation that wasn't mentioned on the slides, I'm actually surprised it wasn't up there, with all due respect, is caffeine. Everybody needs caffeine. Thank you for all coming after lunch and being here with enough caffeine. As you can tell, I'm also highly caffeinated. So, with all this caffeine, I can explain the secrets that we have to innovation as well. But I wanted to start off by telling you a personal story. I like to, every city, not only do I look for waves, but in most of them I'm looking for good coffee. And some of the best coffee I've had is here. But on one of my recent trips, I was with my wife, I was with my child. If you'll just give me a second, I'll explain a kind of personal story here. And we were walking around downtown San Francisco, and I was looking at, kind of on my map, and I'm sitting there going, what is the best coffee? I'm sure some of you guys have done this too. And I'm thinking, how can I find something unique? And I'm walking with my daughter, and she's asking questions. What's this? Oh, it's a museum. What's this over here? Well, that's an interesting store. This is a business park. And then we come up on something that I have a hard time explaining to my 5-year-old daughter. But at the same time that I'm trying to think about how to explain where we've ended up, this was not the coffee shop, at least I actually never went in there, is how do I explain that the hairs on the back of my neck are sticking up? How do I explain that I'm starting to feel a little bit of unease in this part of the neighborhood? On one side of the street, there's the Four Seasons Hotel. 2 blocks away, we have something like this. But if you notice, it's pretty obvious to any human that what sticks out to you? Is that a bullet hole? Is that just something smashing through the window? Why are there chains around there? What's the graffiti? And the reason I bring this up is in the digital world, it's hard to see the graffiti. It's hard to see decay. In the digital world, it's so easy for everything to look pristine, to look new, to look like anything else. And so my challenge, actually, I don't have all the answers here, I have a lot of questions to this audience, would be, would you call this a security problem, or would you call it a safety problem? When I talk to my daughter, I'm not telling her that she should feel secure. I'm not talking to her about the security measures in place in the city on our walk to look for coffee. I'm talking about safety. How do we feel safe? How do we do that at scale? How can you feel safe when you're with 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 people? How do we do that on the web? How do we do that on a computer network where we have millions, billions of people, trillions of devices potentially? How can we impart safety? So what is the difference between safety and security? I would argue that safety is an emotional feeling as well. You understand logically that there's a rationale for your security. Maybe there's defenses in place, maybe you're aware, maybe you're thinking about it. But how is it that you go to that and transcend to that emotional safety? Think about this. We all interact with children, whether they're our own or our nephews, or we were once children, we forgot. But think about that time when someone threw you up in the air and caught you. You weren't afraid, you felt safe. When you walk with your friends, when you walk with your loved ones, you hold hands, you feel safe sometimes. How do we give that? What's different in the digital world? Well, in the digital world, there's a few things. One, space is different, as I've just shown you, but also time. What we're thinking about here is the time scale of machines and humans. So for humans, we're operating in a time scale that our brain is used to. Things happen on a regular pattern. Our brains are comfortable with this prediction ability. But what about a machine? What about an attack that can take down shipping around the world in under 7 minutes? Do you think that's going to get slower, or do you think it's going to get faster? I would argue it's only going to get faster because the machine scale keeps getting faster. It scales better.
Of course, if I run out of time, they'll continuously ask me to talk a little bit faster, and I'll have to do the whole speech like this, right? So, but that wouldn't make sense for us. We're not going to speak that way. We're not going to communicate at that scale. The third thing that I want to mention is not just the space and time, but how are we integrating and engaging other people on the other end of the devices. We talk about security of networks, great. We talk about security of devices, fantastic. But how are we engaging them? This is just for demonstration purposes. It kind of reminds me of the dialog boxes. Every time your computer was about to crash 10 years ago, it would say, the computer's going to crash, okay or cancel. And you always wonder what happens if you hit cancel, does it not crash? If you hit okay, does it crash? Or is it always the same outcome? So why is it that we expect that people are going to respond to something like this with anything other than a little bit of like, oh my goodness, what just happened? Is my stuff there? Are my photos there? Do I pay the ransom? And so if we're going to put new defenses in place, I know this slide makes no sense, but we have machines operating at machine scales, humans that are out of the loop, and now I just want to think, if it's so easy to fool humans, if it's so fast for us to embrace new technologies like AI and ML, it almost feels like we have a rubber stamp that has AI and ML on it, and we can go around to any booth, including our own, and stamp it on any paper, any booth, any brochure, any marketing around there is going to say AI and ML. But why aren't we considering this a new attack surface more? Why are we not thinking about how we're going to defend this new defense? So I'm all for AI and ML. We've been using it since the 80s. It is a powerful tool, not just for cybersecurity, but for all the way that we're going to interact with our lives. So I want to embrace the possibilities of what AI brings to us, but I also want to make sure that you in the audience, and I'm sure there's many experts better than I am at AI and ML in this audience, are also thinking about how do we not just make smart things smarter, how can we make them not just more secure, how do we make them safer? How is it that I'm going to have trust in AI and ML? Just like I have trust when my daughter has trust in me when I toss her up in the air and I catch her at the playground. So, on the upper left-hand side is an image of a school bus. On the upper right-hand side is the image of a school bus. But to a classification algorithm, how did we get it to consider it to be an ostrich? I could have made it a llama. I can make it anything I want. It's not random that it became an ostrich. We just decided to make a school bus an ostrich. Okay? Just like we did with the dog on the lower. And the way we do this is if you understand that how it's working, how it's seeing the world, the machine sees the world different than we do. It sees with different eyes. It represents the world as numbers in a grid. And when you understand those numbers and you understand the math, I saw maybe a little bit of calculus earlier in the previous presentation, which is good. But if you understand how it's learning and how it's seeing the world, and if you add that middle column, that targeted attack on AI and ML, I can get it to see things differently. This isn't about facial recognition. This is just a way I wanted to show you facial recognition. Okay? I'll give you another example. Upper left hand, the top side is a colleague of mine, and the bottom row is a colleague of mine. To you guys, are they the same person? No. One is a researcher, one is our CTO, and what we did here is we trained an AI algorithm, machine classifier, on both of their images and some other images to recognize them. And then we 3D printed this. This was some work done by a university researcher who's actually going to be based here in Israel going forward with us. And he 3D printed these glasses, and with a laser printer, he was able to go ahead and produce this targeted attack on AI. So if you watch this video, in the upper left-hand corner, it recognizes him as Dr. Saurabh Shinte. Okay? He's just recreating this experiment. He puts on his rather stylish, maybe from LA glasses, and he becomes Hugh Thompson, our CTO. He assures me this is not just to approve his expense reports. Not sure. Now, he moves around, it sees him, he takes the glasses off, and he's back to normal. So how comfortable do we feel if you were going to use this as a security system that it can't be fooled? When I can make anything look like something else, when I can make something else invisible. And we all know where AI and ML is going to be deployed and at what scale. And so I would ask you to think about the implications of it. Here's another example. Stop sign from the United States. Right? You see it? Autonomous car, person, we know to stop, right? Same thing, Dawn Sung at Berkeley, her group goes up there, figures out that if you put targeted pieces of tape on the stop sign, and you may have seen this as a great video on YouTube, she can make it look like it's a 45-mile-an-hour sign. And I don't know, they must have gotten a student here to do this, because this guy stood right in front of the stop sign while the car almost drove into him. That's a problem. That means that we haven't really fully understood this, that we haven't brought back control to the edges, the rough edges of AI and ML. And if it's going to be in the cars, if it's going to be in the planes, if it's going to be in our defense systems, I think we need to think a little bit more about that. You can't have an AI and ML talk without having a picture of a robot or something like this. Classic thing. But why do I do it? Because the end of my talk is really, and I'm about to wrap up, is really about the fact that as AI and robots take new form factors, we're assigning them additional attributes. My daughter grew up with Siri. She would talk to Siri. She'd say things like, "I love you, Siri." And Siri's response is, "I love you to the moon and back." It's cute. So I unplugged Siri one day. Now she's asking me questions about what happened to Siri. Did Siri not like her? Was Siri run away? Did she grow up? Did she go to school? How are we, remember that image before of someone interacting with something, a dialogue box on a screen, a two-dimensional screen, if that's how we're going to be interacting with our customers, with our SOC analysts, with our end users, what about what happens? What are the implications for all of you experts in here? What are the implications when you start adding emotion to it? How do we get the human back in the loop so that we can think about that? And that's my call to action for all of you. For everybody out there, I want you to think about the innovations that are necessary for that. Is it only going to be in technology? No. Is it going to have to involve sociology? Yes. Psychology, behavioral economists, graphic designers, even fields and disciplines that we're not so familiar with or haven't even invented yet. So I would encourage you, at especially university, to reach across all the different disciplines, the different departments, and invite them to help you solve this problem. That's what I would love to see. Thank you for the time. Let's make things not just more secure, let's make them safer, okay?
The team.